Welcome to Reframe, the podcast where we're redefining what's possible, one mindset shift at a time. I'm Jess, your guide on this journey to help you to rewrite your story and transform from the inside out. Let's dive into how small changes in the way you think can lead to big changes in the way you live. Hello. Oh my goodness, I had such amazing feedback from last week's episode on how going back is not the same as going backwards. So loads of different examples of women who have either, like really similarly to me, started a business that they were passionate about and then found that the business side of it and trying to grow it kind of took over the passion side. So they've now gone back to what they were doing before business wise, but maybe are still doing the passionate business, but just from a place of passion. Some people who have gone back to what they were doing before and since listening to the episode felt inspired to pick up the passion side of things again without the pressure of it growing as a business. I had examples of women who are currently in that struggle of trying to grow. And in no way do I ever want to encourage anyone who is, putting their everything into a business that they're so passionate about to stop doing it. Because absolutely, there are so many people who make millions from a business that they're passionate about, or who help millions of people if the money side of it isn't your ultimate goal, or they can really make business and purpose work in harmony. So I don't want to encourage anyone to ever stop trying to make their passionate business work. But it seemed that there were some people that kind of got the permission slip that they didn't need, or maybe didn't know that they needed. I don't know. But it's been so lovely hearing your stories. So yeah, that just any episode that you listen to, please do let me know if it's resonated with you, and even if it hasn't, it's great to hear how different episodes land with different people. So this week, we're going to talk about holding ourselves back. Now, after kind of going through my own experience of going back and really living out that example that it didn't mean going backwards, it's really fired me up to see where else in my life I am maybe holding myself back. So I did a bit of a Wheel of Life exercise. If you don't know what this is, I've done a whole podcast episode on the Wheel of Life because it's such a wonderful tool. But to give you just a brief example, if you're like invested in this episode, it's basically taking a zoomed out perspective of your life. So you can do it as a visual, like a journaling exercise, where you basically draw a circle, split it into 8 sections so it looks like a wheel or a pie, and then each section is a different area of your life. So that could be love, family, friends, work and business, money, physical health, emotional health, spirituality. You could have travel in there, you could have sense of community, hobbies, interests, things like that. But you choose 8, or you could make it a 10 slice pie, as many as you want, and you give each area a score out of 10. And it's not a score in terms of success in that area, it's a score in terms of satisfaction. So if you have like $1 million in the bank, but your money mindset, like you fear spending money, or you feel guilty because you've got that money, or there's just any kind of you don't feel satisfied with it. Maybe for you want 10 million, or maybe for you don't want that money at all, or you want to be doing better things with that money. You might actually rate that a 2 out of 10. So that's kind of what a Wheel of Life is. And once you've given those scores, you can then go in. I gave journaling exercises that you can use in the dedicated podcast to that topic. But it just gives you an overview so you can look at, okay, where am I at? Where do I want to be? And how can I get there ultimately? So I did this, but I went in, like, I'm talking radical, bold perspective shifts. So what I did first was like a bit of a visualization exercise to really get me geared up. So I imagined that I was at the pearly gates and I had some time to sit with God. Now, you can use whatever higher power you believe in. I personally have a connection with God, which is a very recent thing for me. But for you, that might be spirit guides, the universe, uh, loved ones who have passed over. But for me, it was with God. And I got to the pearly gates and I had time to sit and just look at my life and see what areas I've held back. Like, I imagine that I was sitting up on these fluffy clouds and I was like, okay, like, how am I doing? Not that this is some kind of test or exam, this life, but this is what my life is. And I almost got the opportunity to see what my life could be, or what areas of my life I was just playing small in, holding back in. And it was a real life is too short kind of moment. So I mentioned this on last week's episode, or no, the week before, that I had a moment about a month ago where I thought that I lost someone incredibly close to me, like one of the most important people in my life. And she's absolutely fine now, but there was a moment where I thought that I had lost her. And it really has made me see how, firstly, how short life is, but also how I've been living on autopilot in a lot of areas of my life. And don't get me wrong, I have stepped out of comfort zones. I've started businesses, I've healed from a toxic relationship, I've co-created an incredible co-parenting relationship. Like, I've lived boldly in lots of ways, but there are many ways or areas of my life where I'm still very much asleep. And I always thought that I was like a really woke person. I use little air quotes when I say that. Because I don't know, like, I'm a bit hippy dippy. Like, I'm very much into my health and wellness. And I feel like there's a lot of, I'm big into my conspiracy theories. And I'm at this stage where I'm like I was going to say trying to grow my own fruit and veg. I'm not growing any, but like, I'm trying to eat organically, as much farm produce. I've got like a water filter because I will not drink tap water. I'm having such challenges with like the schooling system, which I think is something that's going to be coming up a lot probably. Like uh, alternative routes of education for my children. And my whole goal would be to buy a plot of land, build on it, grow my own fruit and vegetables, have chickens to have our own eggs, like dig a well and have our own water source and have solar energy, and just be out of like the schooling system and just feel unfiltered, not to be seeing life through the lens of the government, the education system, and just, yeah, to be more awake. And I feel like I already felt like I was there a lot. But I went to an energy healing session back at the end of November, beginning of December. And it was a real like synchronicity how I even got to that healing session. It was someone that I'd followed like a few years before on social media. I really wanted to go. They were really booked up. And for me, I have to feel the call to do something. I did Cambo a while ago, which if you don't know what it is, look it up because it is wild. And I knew it was the right time. And then I had an opportunity to do another type of plant medicine, and it just wasn't the right time for me. And I know that when the time is right, I will do it. But yeah, with this energy healing session, I just knew it wasn't the right time yet. And then I randomly got this intuition that, like, just this knowing, oh, I need to do that. It was when I was having my morning matcha, which I always stand outside and I have conversation with God. And I just have that kind of moment where I haven't looked on my phone yet. I'm like completely unfiltered. It's just me and my connection to source and energy and nature. And I can just be awestruck by like the beautiful sunrise and the sound of the birds. And it's just the time of day where I feel most connected and pure almost. Because as soon as I then open my phone and I'm in social media, you're just bombarded with other people's opinions, and I don't know, it's just my favorite time. And this feeling came to me that I'm ready to have that session. Anyway, by this time I've unfollowed this person on social media, because every so often I do that. I do a bit of a cull so that I'm only following accounts that are super current to what I'm wanting to learn about at that time. And I could not remember her name, her business account's name, and I tried and tried and tried, and I couldn't find her. I knew that one of my friends also followed her. I looked through who she was following, still couldn't find her. And I said to myself, wouldn't it be nice if I found her? Because this is a little mindset trick that works, I'd say 90% of the time. If I can't find a hat, my keys, if I can't remember the name of something, if an idea pops in my head, and then like it does, if you're listening to this, you're probably kind of getting a sense of it, that I go off into lots of different tangents. I then forget about what it was that I was going to say. And 90% of the time, if I say, wouldn't it be nice if I remembered ... and I will remember it. And so the next day I was having my morning matcha and it came to me, spinal waves. And that was it. And I looked it up and I was like, there she is. And I went on her account. Like I said, she'd always been really booked up. She had a cancellation spot. This was on like the Wednesday. She had a cancellation spot on the Saturday. I was child free. And it was her second to last session, in-person session, she was going to be doing before they moved to Portugal in the new year. And I was just like, this is meant to be. Anyway, I went, had the most amazing experience. And what she said to me at the end was, I just kept thinking, will this woman wake up? And I was thinking, oh, was that, like, my instant thought was like, oh, did I not wake up, kind of come round when everyone else did? And then she was like, I just kept thinking, like, this person is so asleep. She needs to wake up, as in like, just like asleep to life. And there was a slight part of me that felt a bit insulted, because I was like, what? I'm pretty woke. And then it just hit me like, gosh, she's right. She's right. As aware as I am in so many areas, there are so many things that I just go along with, or I hold back in. And I am someone who has worked so hard to not care what people think, but it just unlocked this whole new level of, wow, I was still really caring what other people thought. And it was so eye-opening. And she actually said to me, do you know what? It wasn't December. Or was it? No, it was end of October. It was the end of October, because she said to me, for the next 8 weeks, I think it was end of October, I don't know, for the next however long, it was a big chunk of time, no audiobooks, no podcasts. Like, I don't want you listening to anyone else. Just listen, like, just connect to yourself. And I was like, oh, but I'm starting a podcast in the new year. And I was like, this is the perfect time, not listening to anyone else. So I deleted Audible, I deleted the podcast app, and I just connected with myself. My morning matches with God just became even more clear. And it was amazing. And then when I started this podcast, I was doing it from a real place of like, just me, and not that I would ever copy other people's ideas, but we hear quotes and words of wisdom and things all the time from other people. So it's really easy for your words and your thoughts to just not be purely yours. And they'll never be, obviously we're a society. We're going to be inspired by people and learn from people and connect. Like, Of course we are. That's how it's meant to be. But to have these moments where we can really just come back to ourselves, it was amazing. Anyway, I have divulged. But all of this combined, so the healing session, what happened with my loved one, and then also the proof of my change in business and how that has turned out to be like the most amazing thing ever, despite that initial resistance that I had. All of that has kind of accumulated to give me proof and instill beliefs that change is good, life is too short, we can go back, there's no shame in going back. Nothing changes if nothing changes. It's one of my favourite quotes, but there are times throughout my life where that quote just hits new meanings for me. Nothing really matters. Nothing really has a meaning until we give it one. Rain is rain. And we are the creators of our lives. So now any little signs that I'm getting that change needs to happen, they're actually feeling, rather than this feeling like this kind of off feeling, like for example with my business change, where I went from solely running the journal club and feeling little feelings being off with trying to grow it, and whenever I tried to have like my business head on with it and with like financial things, and I'd have little moments where I'd think, go back to content creating, just stick to the journal club as a passion thing, and if it grows, it grows. Any little moments like that just felt off. It felt like resistance. It felt like failure. That's how I labeled it. It felt like shame. It felt like embarrassment. It felt like, but what will people say? How will I look? I won't then be able to go back to doing it. What if that doesn't work out? That was how it made me feel. And those are things that I'd usually, have a bit of awareness on, maybe ignore, maybe just journal on. Things like that, I'm now seeing as really strong pulls in a new direction. So, for example, I have had a lot of kind of niggling feelings for the past, I'd say 4 years, around homeschooling. And it's like a whole other subject, which I will talk about in another episode. But before, I'd have these odd little moments, again, like I was with wanting to change direction with the business. And then it got to that point where all of a sudden it wasn't just a little kind of niggling feeling that I could ignore. It was this is what you need to do. We're just changing direction. And that's where I'm at now with homeschooling. It's where I'm at in so many areas of life. And rather than feeling those things as like, oh, it's going to be a change, it's going to be fearful, I need to resist it, I'm seeing it as, oh, hello, is this a sign? Is this an opportunity to change direction? Okay, let's go. So imagine, to kind of give a visual, because I know lots of you are visual people, and even though I'm personally, I have aphantasia, so I can't visualize, but I can vividly imagine. So imagine you're floating down a river, and there's like a little current tugging at you to change course on that river. And you use the oar to pull against it, and you're feeling fear, and you then start avoiding any currents and being on the lookout and feeling like stressed and fearful and just hoping like, oh, I just hope this river just keeps running smoothly and there's no currents, and no, I can't, like, I will feel so out of control if I go with those currents. But then eventually you do follow one of those currents, and maybe that's because you can look ahead and you see that where that current wants to take you is actually something that your heart desires, or maybe it's because actually the current is so strong that it just takes you and you don't have a choice. But either way, however you go down this route, you get there and you realize, oh wow, that change, that transition was scary. It was a bumpy ride. this river, how this change of course, it's running a bit faster or a bit bumpier, like I have to acclimatize to it. But wow, I'm so grateful for that little shift in current that led me to this. And this is what often happens. And I'm sure this will be quite a nice journaling exercise, actually, to think of an example in your life where you have taken the leap, like consciously decided, I'm going to make this change, and it's worked out for the best, because that's your proof that change is good and change is safe. But also think of a time where it perhaps wasn't your choice. Maybe you got made redundant, maybe you were broken up with in a relationship, maybe a friend decided they didn't want to be friends with you anymore, or something like that, that was not your choice but actually has ended up being the best thing that happened to you. I can think of it, both types of example in my life. So eventually you see that the direction that current took you on, like it's a beautiful stretch of river. So then the next time you see a little shift in current, rather than resisting it, you think, oh, a shift in current. I know now that when this happens, amazing things can happen. And of course, there are times where it's not always for the best. Sometimes we do make a change and it's not what we wanted, or it's not a change that makes us feel happier or thrive, or or just feel good. But then we can see, okay, there's an opportunity here for me to learn. Okay, it's we either win or we learn, and even learning is winning, because we're then seeing what we don't want to do again. We're seeing how we can do things differently. We're giving an opportunity to heal, to grow, to be stronger, and things like that. So this really is what happened for me, and it's teaching me to really decipher between bad currents and good currents, because there will always be currents. Like, there will always be currents. Okay, they'll always be a bit tricky to navigate at first. They'll be different to what you're used to, maybe a bit more work, maybe scary. But the more that you get to know yourself through experiencing these currents, the more you'll get to know which ones you're fearing because they're actually meant to be feared, and which ones you're fearing due to limiting beliefs, which are aimed at keeping you safe, but instead they're keeping you on the steady, maybe slightly boring, restrictive river flow, which has less opportunities and more opportunities to moan. And, examples of the kind of the currents that we fear due to limiting beliefs, that can be, the kind of limiting beliefs can be, but what if we get judged? What if we fail? What if it doesn't work out? And things like that, rather than, actually that current, it looks really rocky and there's a waterfall at the end, and that is something to fear. And it's the whole example again of, sometimes we can feel, I feel like this is a bit of a trend on TikTok that I'm seeing at the moment, like my nervous system doesn't know the difference between being chased by a bear and meeting new mums on the playground. Like, there are things to fear in life. Of course they are. Like, we're human and our nervous systems need to do their job. But sometimes they just go a little bit on overdrive, and it's just knowing which current is actually a bear and which current is just a limiting belief, So the more that you experience change, and that could just be, it doesn't have to be these big radical changes, although the whole point of this podcast is about big radical change. I feel like spring is coming and I'm like, right, we can start talking about action now and change. But it could be that it's, you just try a different gym class, or you go for your walk in the afternoon instead of the morning, or you try matcha instead of coffee. Like, just shifting up different things to step out of your comfort zone. Or it could be the big things. It could be, do you know what? I'm going to change my career. I'm going to change my relationship. I'm going to move to a different country. But whatever ones you're doing, success leaves clues. I think that's a Tony Robbins quote, and I absolutely love it. We every time you step out of your comfort zone and it works out, use that as your proof that you can do it again. Okay, it works. Change is safe. Going back can be safe. I'm not saying you should always go back. But if you're not going back just because you're afraid of what people will think, that's not a reason not to go back. If you're not going back because it was a toxic situation, because it was a terrible job, because it made you miserable, then yeah, don't go back. But when you take away the fears of things like other people's opinions, judgments, your own opinions, your own expectations, you do see it as winning or learning. And if it doesn't work out, it's easier to have the mindset of just seeing it as the practical outcome. So, for example, okay, the business didn't. I'm trying to think of an example. So maybe the change that you make is in starting a new business, and say it doesn't work out. When you have this mindset of everything is winning or learning, you will more likely just look at it as from the practical rain is rain is what it is kind of perspective. So, okay, the business didn't grow. I'll just need to get a job, or I will start a different business. I need to just make these emails, have these conversations, and that's it, rather than, oh my God, I failed. How embarrassing. What will people think? What will people say? I've not reached my own expectations, and things like that. You really see it from an it is what it is, rain is rain perspective, rather than all those other things. So going back to looking at like a wheel of life style, and what kind of shifts and what kind of changes can we make without this fear of change and without this fear of outcomes and things like that. I would love for you to do that visualization. Really imagine that you are with spirit guides, a past loved one, God, the universe, whatever it might be, and looking at your life and seeing, like, okay, I'm looking at my life now and how I really want my life to be. Like, if I could just imagine this limitless life, how I want that to be. And then I'm going to give you some journaling exercises. So for each area of your life, where am I out of alignment? Where am I holding back? What do I truly desire in this area? Limiting belief free. If there were no limiting beliefs, how should this area of my life be looking right now? Like, what was this area of life meant to be like? Am I living the life intended for me by the highest power? Like, if you were going to have a conversation with your spirit guides, God, the universe, and say, is this what you meant for me? Am I reaching my fullest potential in this area? And that doesn't mean like being this high achiever. It's, are you meant to be living free? Are you meant to be, working yourself to the bone? Are you meant to be in a miserable, toxic relationship? Are you meant to be waking up feeling anxious and spending all your time on social media and not loving what you see in the mirror? Like, what was intended for you? Are you meant to be loving and living and having fun and feeling connected to yourself and thriving and sleeping with ease and seeing the world and feeling passionate with what you do in business? Are you meant to be part of a community, but you're holding back through social anxiety when you're meant to be around people? And this will really kind of open up for you areas that you can heal, and where you might have different limiting beliefs and you've not realized. And then lastly, what bold action do I want to take? Or what bold action do I need to take in these areas? I would absolutely love to know how you get on with this journaling exercise, and how you found this episode. So please do send me a message, comment wherever you're listening to this podcast. Usually there's opportunities to comment. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear kind of where you realize you're maybe holding yourself back, and what you're going to do to change that. So thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed it, please do give it a 5-star rating, and I will catch you on the next episode.